the 5 of us were fortunate enough to attend a literacy conference. It wasn't in San Diego, it was in Madison. Kidding.
The red one.
It was
just touch it.
but really, it
Yes.
was very, very informative. We were fortunate enough to rub elbows with the hoi Floyd. We learned from the big wigs. Doug Fisher, Nancy Fry. It was fantastic. What we need to develop, what we learned through our week, is that we need to develop amongst ourselves a common vocabulary. So words that you're going to hear that I want you to pay attention to, that we're gonna make part of our common vocabulary all year long in PLCs. We're going to look at visible learning. We are going to look at learning intentions as opposed to learning targets. We're going to look at success criteria. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into John Hattie's research, which includes, at this point in time, 1 billion students. So the information that you're getting isn't hearsay, isn't because John Hattie says it's the good thing to do and he's John Hattie after all. This research is based on 1 billion students worldwide, okay? With that, I'm going to hand it over.
Yes.
Anyone not have the sign-in sheet? Oh, sorry. The person right next to me. Who's next? You. Oh, I'm next. Okay. So again, coming back to visible learning. So there's 2 books. Actually, Hattie has written a lot of books. Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry that Sarah mentioned, who we got to, like she said, rub elbows with at the conference, have partnered with him to further his work around, more specifically, literacy and mathematics. So the first book, the White Book, is the first book that he wrote. I think that came out in 2009. So this was the first time, if you remember on Monday, I said how, you know, when I first started teaching, people would say, oh, this too shall pass. This was the first time that someone did a meta-analysis of all the research. So he looked at, and again, I'll go back to the 1 billion students that he's done research on, and he said, here is what impacts student achievement the most. Someone asked me, I don't think it was in this group, can you flip it to the next slide, please? Someone asked me about the wheel, and then flip it back. Thank you. Someone asked me, remember the wheel, and then we'll come back to that. So what he did in the White Book is he said, so let's take a group of students and let's compare them with student achievement. So if you did homework, and I'm going to stick with K-8, if kids did homework versus kids that didn't do homework, which had the greatest impact on student achievement? The kids who didn't do homework didn't have any more achievement than the kids who did do homework. So the whole question K-8 is really around why are we doing homework? Because it's really not a huge impact. 9 through 12 high school, different story because there's a lot of it depends. So that effect size, if you can go back to that one, this is Robert. So that is what gives us the effect size. So it's a comparison of 2 groups of students and measuring whether they had the effective homework or whether they didn't, and what the impact on student achievement was. Remember, 0.4 is the hinge point. Anything below 0.4 is less than a year's growth or a year's growth. And remember, if I live and breathe, as a child, I'm going to grow. However, we know that, no, you can go to the next one. We know that when students come to us, there are deficits. So when we get them, what's the biggest impact on student achievement? So collective teacher efficacy, we touched on this on Monday. 1.57, that is the greatest impact on student achievement. What is collective teacher efficacy? We're going to get into that this year, right? It's PLCs on steroids. I don't know who said that, but I just love that. Because it really is around, I know I can make a difference in every child's life because I know every child can achieve the standard. study skills is over to Ronnie.
Where it's standing for, it's not this. So
Oh, yeah, I don't think I was in the camera.
I want to be. Study skills, the reason that we put this up here is because you'll see the study skills are more than a year's growth. So students having good study skills are going to help them grow more than they would grow otherwise. Last year, we did a lot of work with those of us that went to the Avid training, and we talked about marking the text, and we talked about Cornell notes. And we wanted to bring that up again so that everybody knows, like, that's not going away. It's not like we said, well, marking the text was last year, this year we're going to do something different. Marking the text we want to continue doing, and we want to continue doing it as a staff so that we're all kind of doing it the same way, so the kids are learning how to take notes and how to have these study skills. We have some different things that are happening within WARP, and we have some different things that are happening within study halls. They're all going to start promoting these study skills that we can see. If kids have good study skills, and I think all the teachers in here would probably say that's one of the problems with a lot of our kids. They don't know how to study. And so them starting to learn those skills so that they can get better in their classes is going to be helpful. All right.
So Sarah's gonna go next, the other Sarah, so I'll come in front of the camera. Before you do that, so as you walked in, I handed out Charlotte Danielson's Framework for Teaching. So when our friend Charlotte first developed this, it was not the Framework for Teacher Evaluation. It isn't. It was, here's what we know really good teachers do. And she created the 4 domains. So we're tying in teacher clarity with 3A. So if you look at 3A, which is communicating with students, one of the things is how we communicate with students, and that's what we're really going to focus on. Oh, sorry, I thought it was Sarah.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
So teacher clarity is about teachers knowing what their students should learn. Not what their students should do, but what are they supposed to be learning when they come into your class. And then it's also about students knowing what they should learn. A lot of us have boards similar to this where we have, our daily activities and what's happening in our classes each day. And I think that that's important. I think it's important for students to know what's going to happen throughout the week. But it's not only important for them to know what they're going to be doing, but what they're going to be learning. And so we've kind of looked at it through a different lens to go to the learning intentions, which a lot of you have in your classrooms, I'm sure, have some sort of learning target. I know since the time I've been teaching, it's been, like an I can statement, a learning target, a learning intention, and I've not been teaching for very long, so it's probably been called like 500 other things before that. And this is, what you're hoping that the students accomplish throughout the day or the unit or the week. For today, it's by the end of the session, you'll be able to understand key visible learning messages and be able to link it to what we're doing at WALP. So that's the learning intention for this session here. And then it's to take it that next step further and say, why? Why are we doing this? Because I think that that's a piece that, as teachers, and myself, I forget to tell them, why is this important? And saying, well, because it's in the Common Core Standard is not really a good reason. Why is it in the Common Core Standard? Why do we care that they can do these certain skills? And I think making it important to them makes it easier for them to learn. So why are you learning this? Because clarity and visible learning make learning more relevant and meaningful for students. And then the last piece is the success criteria. So students know what they're learning, they know why they're learning it, and they know, okay, well, if I've learned it, what is it actually going to look like? And as we talk a little further today, you'll get some examples on how to do success, which I cannot say, criteria.
All the time.
Success criteria. And I did it as a chart, so like not yet, so they haven't learned it yet, and that means they might have to ask some more questions. They have a basic understanding so they could say it, and then you mastered saying, like, you could actually go back to your room now and make these posters because you figured out what we're talking about here. So that's kind of how I did my success criteria, but that might look different in other people's rooms with different types of examples. Another thing that I added after going to the conference was this, what can I clarify more? Because I find that myself, when I'm teaching, I know what I'm teaching. So I assume that my students come in and I tell them what I know, and then they're like, oh yeah, I totally understand what she said. And a lot of times they do not understand what I'm saying. So I got Post-its for each of my different classes, like different colors for each of my classes. So there's questions up on my board. And then my goal is that at the end of the day, I'm going to pull them all off and kind of read through them. And then I'll know that my questions for American Lit I'll kind of cover them in my American Lit classes, and then my questions for freshman English, I'll cover them in my freshman English class. And it might have been from a different hour, but we know that a lot of kids have the same questions and are afraid to ask them. So I think it's important to cover all of those. So that's why I added the one St. Clair report. And that's all. Oh, see, teacher clarity, 0.75. So it's important that the kids know what they're learning.
So that means that they grow almost
More than
2 years because of teacher clarity, of listing these things. That's huge. That doubles their learning, essentially.
Right, so the, So so basically to sum up everything that Ronnie just said is we basically have to focus on the student learning rather than just what we're doing. So instead of just writing, we're going to do this today, you're gonna write or tell them we're going to learn this today. So it's not just what you're doing or the activity or the homework, you're gonna tell them what they're actually gonna accomplish at the end of that day or the end of that week or the unit or whatever it is. So why are we telling you all of this? It's on our Why Am I Learning This board, but we came to the conclusion at this conference that you all know what you want them to learn, so why can't we tell the students that? So, I mean, they should know why they're learning, what they're learning, like, and then how they know that they're actually learning it. And those 3 questions were, what am I learning today? Why am I learning this? And how will I know that I've learned it?
Okay, so let me talk about the video. John Hattie, just a little bit before we do this video, which doesn't have great volume, so we'll put on closed caption, which I have to do for my poor deaf husband now anyway, but John Hattie, I know you guys have all been hearing about John Hattie, and you know, I will tell you, I'm one of those people that when I hear theory and research, I'm like, yeah, shut up, you aren't even in the classroom. And I get very, right? You aren't even in the room, don't tell me what doesn't work. But this guy actually took hundreds and hundreds of action research using real kids in classrooms all over the world, 1 billion kids over the years, and did a meta-analysis. And that's how he came up with all of this. So he's like the guy. Remember, and if any of you did, you know, a master's project and you had to do an action research project, remember all that work? And, you know, it was just a minute group of kids. You know, he took major studies, and he even, some of the studies he even said these aren't even valid because of this or this. He was very particular in what he used. And he did this synthesis of you know, a meta-analysis of all the research, and he came up with things. And that's why I really give him a ton of credit and do acknowledge him. It's not just a buzzword name. This guy is like the God of telling us what's actually good for our kids and what can make us better teachers. So I know a lot of people see the books and, oh yeah, it's another book, it's another guy, and he wrote all these books, he's making money. He is, but based on other people's work, essentially. And you know, you can go through some of these books and look at things like peer tutoring. Oh, what effect does that have on my kids? Should I use that? And what studies did he use? And it's fabulous, it's fabulous. None of these are super friendly reading, but you can go through and do pieces of it, and it's just invaluable. So we just got a little video on him. Kind of a cool accent, which always makes people sound smarter anyway. And but we have to use a closed caption, right? Because it's not very loud.
Our volume isn't very good.
Yeah, but just kind of so you can know who this guy is. I like to picture people too.
So we'll send you the link.
Yeah.
I'm sure you want to watch it again.
Okay.
Over and over. Right. He's got a lot of great videos on YouTube, so we'll make it bigger so that you can see what he's saying, because it is very soft, and we apologize for that. Oops.
The operative word in that sentence you asked me was and. Learning intentions without success criteria are hopeless. Success criteria without having learning intentions is not as bad, not very good. One of the things that I like Shirley Clark from Anyone's work with Sarah particularly is how you can construct those success criteria in terms of what students are supposed to learn, not what they're supposed to do. One of the mistakes I see is so often you have a learning intention about what we're doing today. It's just not interesting. It's not about the task. Like, I go back to the example I was using before. The best way of showing students what success criteria is to show them what a name looks like before they start. Show them what a bee looks like. Show them what the end of the product looks like. Now, a lot of teachers I work with struggle with that because they think that what success looks like is what you achieve when you get to the end. And obviously in our time-constrained world, the end means the end of a series of lessons. And we don't value efficiency. What would happen if the kids learned it earlier? Well, that's a bit of a problem for us in many ways. We have to adjust that time frame. I went to a school this morning and I saw the second part of what I wanted to say on this, is I saw the students putting up success criteria when I started. They were doing their science work and they were starting with what would success look like. Now, they struggled to know what that was. They needed a lot of help. That's why the teacher's there. But teaching the kids up front what it looks like when they get there. How do I know when they get there? Like, I go back to my sports analogy. If I said to you, I'm going to teach you what Australian rules football looks like. But I'm not going to tell you what the rules are, and I'm not going to tell you how to score. But I want you to go out there and play it. And many you give up very quickly, particularly in a game like Australian rules. It just looks random. Unfortunately, for a lot of kids in our school, that's what learning looks like. So all I have to do is wait, and I'll either be guided or I'll be told off. What I want to do up front is show them what that success looks like. Like, I go back to the example before. I'm a kid, I'm struggling in maths. Please give me the answer, and then I'll worry about the strategy. Show me what that success looks like. Now, I want both. I want them to get the right answer. But sometimes I have to show them successful learning this way, and now I want you to concentrate and use your efficiency in terms of the strategies. The other part of that is that if you, teacher, before you start, have a clear understanding of what success looks like, you're more likely to get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter. You're more likely to acknowledge and understand what it looks like. And you are, and here's the critical one, you're more likely to tell kids up front. Well, when we were back before, we talked about what a visible learning school looks like. It's when kids know what success looks like before they start. Like, a lot of kids will give up, or they'll do what they have to do until the bell goes. That is not what you call lifelong learning. That's not what I think our schools are about. For some students, they will do what you ask them to do, regardless of whether it's the beginning or the end. Right. But what about those other kids? It's only if it's showing up near the front. Now, the front doesn't mean the very first day. Sometimes on the first day you want to understand what the kids know and don't know before you decide what success looks like. Like, it's Graham Nuttall, he spent years of his life putting microphones on kids every morning of the year, every afternoon he went home and listened to them. And one of his findings, 60% of what's taught in every lesson the kids know already. So it's a very important phase at the beginning to understand what kids don't know. But very soon after that, I just don't think there is any excuse for not exposing to the students what success looks like in this lesson. You might want to then argue that it's cheating, that they get to know that it's really such a problem that they learn what the end of the task looks like at the front. Now, what you're going to have to do as a teacher is you're going to have to be more creative about thinking different ways of understanding whether the kids truly have gotten off that paradigm. So that requires a different set of teaching strategies. Those are the strategies already they have. I just don't think there's any argument about why it should be a secret. Why should we be the people in the room that will dot you on the head to say, now you've got it? If you're going to believe that kids should be self-motivated, should be self-regulation, and should be in all the lovely language we like to use. If you're going to self-monitor, if you're going to self-assess, if you're going to self-talk, if you're going to worry about the whole self-evaluation, you're going to have a target to do that to. Now, one of the things...
So he said a lot there. I just want to summarize a couple of things. First of all, the sports analogy, think about that. I coached cheerleading for a lot of years and we watched film. And I would want them to see the end product, okay? But, within reason, I'm not going to show them the level 6 world champions. I'm going to take a high school or college team and say, here's what this is going to look like when we get done. A certain pyramid sequence or something. There was a metals teacher I worked with in Kenosha, and when I was there, we got to do a lot of visiting other classrooms. It was pretty cool, and he showed the guys this toolbox they were going to create metals class. And right away, the guys come up and they're like, oh, how do you do that? What do you do? He's like, we'll get there. But here's the end product. Here's what it's going to look like. When I taught a comparison contrast 5-paragraph essay, which is a little tricky, with Romeo and Juliet, the first thing we did, we went over a really good student example. You're showing them the end product. This is what it's going to look like. I think about my daughter-in-law just did her master's research on using different algorithms to get an answer in math, and it would start by giving the kids the answer to the problem and saying, okay, here's how do you get there? And of course, there's a lot of argument about that, but it's not wrong to let them see what success should look like. Think about Danielson. I was thinking about this when we talked about Danielson earlier. This was like, what do good teachers do? And we can look at this now. We cheat. We use this, right? Oh, I'm getting evaluated. What should it look like? Here's the end product, what I should look like with what I'm doing. Okay, next slide. So you have learning intentions. We need to kind of come up with some common language. Like Ronnie said, there's a lot of different things to call this. It was called learning targets, then it was called I can statements. So what we're going to go with is learning intentions, because that's pretty much what the world's using now, because, a la Hattie and the billions of research. So the definition is a statement that clearly explains the learning for the day. It is more than the standard, but instead clearly explains what students will be doing as learning. Okay, so it's understandable to the student. So it used to be you put the standard on the board, right? I did that too, and now in the book it's like, for example, compare, contrast the experiences of characters in 2 stories. That's not bad. If you got that on your board, that's better than nothing. Trust me, that's fine. But an improved version. Today we will finish reading second story about city and country life. We will focus on comparing the lives of characters based on their experiences and where they live. So there's your learning. I want you to learn about, these characters and be able to compare them. Okay, so that's the learning intention, like this over here. So what am I learning? Next slide. Success criteria. Again, it's more than just a rubric. It's a model. It's what does this look like in the end? Examples or clear descriptions of how students will be able to expected to demonstrate their learning based on learning intention. I think about when we used to have to teach speech as part of our units in English, and what did we do? We watched good speeches, right? And here's what I want you to look like. You didn't just say, well, here's the rubric, now get up and give a speech. You look at that, you study good speaking. How do you become a good reader and writer? By reading. You have to do those things to get to a good end. So it may be formative pieces or summative, meaning this may be little pieces within a unit, or it may be a final end product. It may require students to discuss, identify, create, explain, produce, whatever. Can be I can statements, in the end. How will I know I learned it? I can do this now. It can be that, but it's really more than that. And then a rubric is only one part of the success criteria. It's not the criteria itself. So giving them a rubric isn't exactly the success criteria. Okay, rubrics are important. We all love rubrics. I know I used to be like, I couldn't do anything without a rubric, but that's only part of it. There's a lot more examples, but again, and like Jackie Hattie said, it's not cheating to let them know what the end product should look like. It's just a different mindset, right? We're not used to that. I'm going to show you what this looks like in the end, and we'll take you through the steps to get there. You guys want to see anything else about learning intention success criteria? Oh, this is a middle school board example. I just threw that in there because I thought it was kind of cool. Everybody has their different way of doing it. What Ronnie's got here is awesome. I especially love this clarify board, because we all have that. Like John Hattie said, it would be kind of cool, the one guy that had kids wearing microphones and talking as he's teaching, things like that, so you know what the kids know. It's kind of neat. So that's just examples. You don't have to be that extravagant. You might have a corner of your board that says, learning intention, success criteria. And here's the other thing I didn't mention last time. It may be a learning intention that is several days long. It doesn't mean you're going to have a new one every single day. It may be something you're working on for days. Like that one with the stories, you're reading 2 stories. It may be the same learning intention, success criteria for 3 or 4 days. Okay. One of the speakers we saw at the conference that, when she gave us her learning intention success criteria during the conference is Chris Anderson. She said she actually gave her students the learning intentions and success criteria for their entire unit at the beginning of every unit and went through it with the kids so they knew exactly what was coming up and what they had to do. And that was kind of cool. I was like, oh, that's a lot, but good.
To tie it back to Danielson, so one of the things, because I've been working with Danielson prior to it being an evaluation tool for many years, the domain is instruction. So if you look at the 3rd domain, that's the domain. The component is communicating with students. But so all of us know what communicating means. But what Charlotte did is went a step further and said, here are the elements. So there are 72 elements If you look at expectations for learning, so when you read Charlotte's work, what she says is, it's what kids are learning. It's not what they're doing. The first time I heard the clarification between doing and learning was in Danielson's work. She didn't talk about learning intentions and success criteria. The expectations of learning are really the teacher explaining what the learning is. And then directions and procedures, are they clear? Explanation of the content, and then lastly, the use of oral and written language. So Charlotte really, and this was started in the 1990s. Charlotte put this together. This is the revised version, and then because of accountability, everybody thought, oh, we should make this type of evaluation system. So, but it is nice because it does give you a clear definition. This is what good, great teachers do. So, and in essence, what we're doing, what Hattie has done is taken that one step further. He doesn't talk about Danielson, but what he does do is talk about other people's work. So Shirley Clark is the first one in England to kind of define what learning intentions and success criteria are, if you're interested in looking up her work. Math was the first one I was looking when Common Core first came out 7 years ago, and we were looking at math. Shirley Clark learning intentions were in a lot of the work around mathematics. So.
This video is just kind of a wrap up of everything that we have gone through. One thing that we kind of want to, our mantra is all students deserve great teachers, not by chance, but by design. So this is just kind of a little parting motivator for you.
And you've seen it, you saw it last spring. Some of you, those of you that were here. I know many may not remember. And this has no sound. So that is, again, Visible Learning by John Hattie, and what he did is he looked at all the research and he came up with 8 implications for teaching. So those are the 8 mind frames that we'll be revisiting, if you're interested, again, all on YouTube. So we finished a little early, so this will give you a few extra minutes to use the restroom. We appreciate your attendance and your
One quick
attention. Go ahead.
If you want, any help, guidance, whatever with, marking text, text size. Socratic seminar, which is discussion, which is a high effect size, not just for your test, but actually Socratic seminar. Any of that stuff, please let me know. Not just me, but there's a lot of people that are experts at those things that are glad to do that. And that's going to be part of our collaborative process, is really taking advantage of the people around you in a good way. And, using them to make you a better teacher for your kids, better learning. Thanks.
Have a great rest of the day.